Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world. Welcome to what is going to be the last of our Future of Work webinar series from the IEA. And today we're going to be looking at the future of work from the perspective of North America. And we're lucky here today to have two representatives from the United States of America. The two speakers are Professor Hongwei Sao and Dr. Gary Roth. Let me just introduce them before we start. Dr. Hongwei, Professor Hongwei, I should say, is a professor and the Rogelio Benavides Memorial Chair at the Texas A&M University in Corpus Christi, where he directs the Smart Technology Advancement Research Initiative, the STAR Initiative. He's been involved in a number of initiatives over the years and received a number of awards. The most recent one has been the International Ergonomics Association. It's from the International Ergonomics Association, where he's been recognized as a fellow of the IEA. He's also been involved in positions looking at various different aspects of risk and hazards, including Chief of the Protective Technology Branch and coordinator of the Center for Occupational Robotics and Research at the U.S. National Institute for Occupational Health and Safety. And he has over 190 publications, patents, and apps in various different areas. Our second speaker is Dr. Gary Roth. Dr. Roth is a Senior Service Fellow in the Emerging Technologies Branch and part of the Division of Science Integration at the National Institutes for Occupational Health and Safety. He's held a number of roles, including as a key participant in the Institute's Nanotechnology Research Center, the Center for Occupational Robotics Research, and the manufacturing sector programs. He also represents NIOSH on America Makes, America's Advanced Manufacturing Institute for Additive Manufacturing. Without any further ado, and without wasting any more of the precious time from our speakers, I'm now going to hand over to Professor Hongwei to take us off. Professor, over to you.
Can you see my slide now?
Not yet. Hongwei?
Oh.
The screens. We tried this earlier. While Hongwei is working that out, I'll just run through a couple of logistical things. If you have any questions for the speakers, we just ask you please to use the Q&A function. That'll help me because I won't have to. There we go. It's starting to come through. I won't have to flip between the chat and the question and answer section. Gary and I are going to turn off our cameras now and hand over to Hongwei.
Okay, so you can see the screen. Correct?
We can. Thank you very much.
Good. Wonderful. Well, thank you for the introduction. I'm delighted, along with my former colleagues, Dr. Gary Roth, to co-present the future of work and the challenges for human factors and ergonomics from the United States of America. In this presentation, I will dig into the role of HFE in the future of work, specifically emphasizing human-centered robotics. Dr. Roth will address the NIOSH Future of Work initiatives, centering on nanotechnology and other emerging technologies. We will wrap up our presentation by addressing questions pertinent to safe and healthy work environment for humans. The industrial landscape and our lifestyles are undergoing dramatic changes worldwide. The future of work can be explored through three lenses: work, workplace, and workforce. Regarding work, artificial intelligence, robotics, emerging technologies, and cybersecurity will play crucial roles in terms of workplace, organizational design, leadership, and culture. Tech job impact and work arrangements are evolving. Concerning workforce, global demographics, economic distribution, worker skills, and the health and well-being of the workforce are expected to be redefined. Within the HFE communities, there are interdisciplinary programs spanning social research, cognitive science, and physical ergonomics, all centered around the themes of work efficacy and human well-being. How can we leverage our strengths to address the challenges and opportunities presented by these transformations? In the current HFE community, we are anticipating various developments in emerging technologies. Some of the foresights include, what will the future driving or mobile office look like? Is working from home expected to become the norm in the future of work? How can we ensure the safe implementation of algorithm-enabled robotics devices in the workplaces? Can industrial exoskeleton effectively prevent work-related musculoskeletal disorders? Will the integration of robots and AI diminish human connections? Is the use of AI likely to result in job loss? Will productivity and ethics undergoing redefinition in the future of work? Over the past decades, numerous events and publications from the US government agencies and the professional entities have covered the agendas of the future of work and emerging technologies. Due to time constraints, I will select a couple of topics for our discussion. The Human Factors and Ergonomics Society in the United States has been actively engaged in facilitating information exchanges on subjects relevant to the future of work. I will provide a briefing overview of some activities that have taken place in recent years. Additionally, I will explore into the aspect of human-centered robotics, focusing on 4 key areas: coexistence with robots, challenges in human-robot partnership, creating a safe work environment for both humans and robots, and navigation through the era of artificial intelligence. US HFES has played a long-standing role in envisioning the future of work and disseminating insights into challenges and opportunities within the human factors communities. Recently, US HFES has intensified its efforts to address the growing utilization of robots, AI, and other emerging technologies in response to the evolving landscape of work. In addition to academic-oriented meetings and conferences, the US HFES has actively organizing initiatives to provide practical, usable, and evidence-based solutions for the challenges faced by ergonomist risk measures and health and safety specialties. ErgoX is a prominent platform in this regard. In 2019, in collaboration with the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health, the society hosted a special symposium in wearable robotics with the goal of enhancing the safe and effective adaptiveness of technologies. The proceedings, titled Exoskeleton in the Workplace, Assessing Safety, Usability, and Productivity, were released in 2020. In 2020, despite the challenges posed by the pandemic, our momentum persisted. ErgoX expanded into a 3-day event covering a diverse range of topics, discussions including robotics research and the future of work, bringing a human factors perspective to emerging intelligent autonomous technologies, challenges and priorities for human-centered robotics, human-robot communications, robotic safety, simulation and methods, and emerging applications. The proceedings are accessible on the HFES website as well. In 2021, ErgoX sustained its commitments to exploring the future of work with parallel tracks and keynote presentation on deep space smart habitats. And the parallel sectors or tracks investigate into AI and human factors for cybersecurity, neuroengineering exoskeletons, AI in exoskeletons, trustworthiness of AI in robotics, and human factors in robot in the age of AI. In 2022, ErgoX continued its dedications to future work by expanding to 4 parallel tracks and features a keynote on human and robot collaboration workforce. The parallel tracks address topics such as security threats to autonomous vehicles, industrial exoskeleton deployments, extended reality and digital twins, trustworthiness of human-robot interaction, human-drone collaboration, human-centered robotics design, human-robot interface simulation, and mobile robot applications. In 2023, that just happens in October, ErgoX directed its attention to specific topics on the future of work, featuring 4 parallel tracks and an open keynote on emerging technology with a closing keynote on the AI agenda. The parallel tracks explored robot brains in space, exoskeleton standards, future of extended reality, GPT, and specialty robots. Now I will discuss the realm of human-centered robotics. This concept embodies a human well-being focused initiatives aimed at advancing robot applications for economics, prosperity, and ensuring workers' safety and health. It is essential to acknowledge the key attribute shared by human and robots. Both possess the 3 common features, that is, physical, sensing, and action abilities. Humans exhibit variations in anthropometry, biomechanical strengths, cognitive capacity, and occupations. Robots also exhibit variations in functions and type. Present days, robots encompass traditional cage robots, collaborative robots, mobile robots, service robots, exoskeletons, autonomous equipments, and specialty robots. Addressing significant human-robot interface considerations is crucial for ensuring workers' safety and health. I will give some examples. Robots have a potential to enhance the quality of life by assuming tasks that are tedious, dangerous, and dirty, which may be fatiguing, infeasible, or less safe for humans to perform. For example, in scenarios where workers are exposed to potentially hazardous vapors while cleaning chemical storage tanks, teleoperation robots are employed to minimize workers' risk exposure. Power line inspections entail risks such as falls, electrical shock, musculoskeletal disorders, and psychological stress. Drones are now being employed to conduct inspections, effectively reducing workers' risk. The shift from sole reliance on human workers to collaborative efforts involving humans and drones is experiencing rapid and exponential growth in the United States. Another case is masonry work involves repeated handling of heavy blocks and frequent bending and twisting body positions, posing risk of muscle and joint injuries in the United States. Brick laying robots are now deployed on job site. Reports indicate that robots can lay bricks approximately 5 times faster than an average mason per day. This allows masonry workers to concentrate on installing specific bricks, such as returns and corners, as well as striking joints, ultimately ensuring the highest quality of walls. Also, robotic surgeons have been employed alongside human surgeons, serving as assistants for precise patient treatments and reducing the workload of human surgeons, as depicted on the left. Additionally, service robot has found application in healthcare units for tasks such as goods deliveries and facilitating health communication, as illustrated on the right. There's a global trend toward robots working closely with human workers. The aforementioned examples in robotics aim to enhance the balance between humans and the ecosystem, prioritizing workers and workplace safety. Robots are increasingly shared workspaces with human workers through various forms, including teleoperations, task collaboration, and close contact. For instance, traditional building demolitions are typically carried out using excavating machines, exposing machine operators to risks such as building collapse, falls from height, or being struck by falling objects. To protect operators, reinforced caps are commonly used. However, there's a shift in the construction market with the introduction of demolition robots. These robots are replacing excavating machines due to their power, flexibility, ease of operation, and the capabilities to navigate doorways and stairs. This marks a shift towards humans sharing space with robots in the construction industry. Traditional grocery inventories rely heavily on manual labors, posing potential risk of falls and repetitive musculoskeletal disorders for workers. The introduction of mobile robots aims to streamline the inventory process, reducing workers' risk and allowing them to focus on customer service. Robots are now sharing space with both workers and shoppers. Numerous lab testing tasks, as depicted on the left, are monitoring, requiring precision processes, and entail potential health risk if performed without adequate personal protective equipment. On the right, compact, easy-to-use collaborative robot systems are employed to mitigate exposures to biological and chemical hazards. This illustrates the coexistence of humans and robots in research labs. Also, transferring a patient from a bed to a wheelchair is among the most physically demanding tasks for healthcare workers, particularly on their low back and upper extremities. Given the growing elderly population, collaborative robot systems present potential solutions for healthcare professional as assistant aid in patient transfer. This signifies the integration of robots into the space shared by healthcare workers and patients. The assembly of laptop motherboards in the electronics industry has traditionally been a labor-intensive process, putting workers at the risk of upper extremities and neck disorders. To address this, collaborative robots are being implemented in high-tech factories to collaborate with workers on repetitive tasks and enable flexible manufacturing of various parts. Well, sustainable robots seeks to enhance the relevance among humans, ecosystems, and societies in the application of robotics, prioritizing the safety of workers and workplaces. I will briefly discuss a couple of cases related to sustainability to highlight its significance. While robots plays a valuable role in performing tasks that contribute to our communities, they are not entirely immune to sustainability and safety challenges. For instance, as robotics policemen are introduced for security check and providing flight information at the airport, CNN News reported an instance in 2017 where a robot sheriff in Washington, D.C. plunged into a fountain after just 5 days of patrolling. This is not an isolated case. The Washington State Fatality Investigation Program reported a fatality related to emerging technology an autonomous forklift detected a plastic film as an obstacle and stopped. Unfortunately, a worker's removing the film was crushed when the elevated fork of the driverless forklift came down on him. Just like any other labor-saving tools, robots must be carefully engineered, and workers must receive proper training to ensure both worker safety and equipment sustainability. The rising and commercially available collaborative robots, including wearable robots, bring forth several challenges issues. These include consideration regarding robots as co-workers or assistant devices, the design of human-robot interfaces that align with human capabilities, the need for robot configuration in shapes and size that accommodate human body dimensions and natural movements, and the challenges related to workers' trust and acceptance. The broader societal adaptations to robots is another concern. Debate has emerged regarding the impact of robotics on human job opportunities. Undoubtedly, within a decade, robots can assume many repetitive workplace tasks, which may not be a favorable development for some individuals, as depicted on the left. However, on the flip side, new job opportunities are emerging, such as production system integrators, robot maintenance professionals, risk assessment engineers, among others, as illustrated on the right. Considering the benefits and cost of robotics, it's crucial to acknowledge that technology and regulations do not always evolve at the same pace. Technological advancement tended to outpace the updating of regulations, so safety standards and best practice guidelines often serve as the midway supporting technological development while prioritizing human safety. The US OSHA, NC, and ASTM standards communities are actively engaged in developing safety guidelines for collaborative robot systems and exoskeletons. Despite advancement of robotics system, technical complications and users' readiness issues are still being experienced. A retrospective study of FDA data of 1.7 million robotics procedures has linked the commercial use of medical robots to 144 deaths, more than 1,000 injuries, and more than 8,000 device malfunctions over a 14 years period. And also a search of OSHA records also indicate 41 cases of industrial robot incidents during 1992 and 2017. Certainly, most of these fatalities are related to the old style robots. To tackle incidents related to robotics, numerous potential topics warrant for explorations. These include human-robot collision limits, alternative solutions for active collision avoidance, optimal human-robot communication modes, the distraction risk exposed by robot or drone, and the application of wearable robots for tasks in healthcare, wholesale, construction, and mining. Numerous additional topics are ripe for explorations as well, including the risk of joint hyperextension associated with wearable robots, fitting exoskeleton and wearable robots to diverse populations, worker acceptance and cognitive capacity for robots, enhance the robot sensors for human safety and health applications, more mobility and flexibility of robots for exposure assessment, and the development of adaptation and self-learning system for workers' protection. Well, individuals may wonder about the intersection of artificial intelligence with occupational robotics research and may question the role that artificial intelligence will play in the future of workplace robotics. For those skeptical about the prospect of robots or artificial intelligence, reaching intelligence level and cognitive capacities compatible to humans, Consider these three predictions that have already been proven wrong. They serve as evidence that we often underestimate the pace of technology advancement. In 1981, Bill Gates predicted that 640 kilobytes of computer memory should be sufficient for anybody. In 1992, Andy Grove deemed a cell phone excessive. And also in 1995, Robert Metcalfe predicted that the internet would crash and became irrelevant in 1996. Well, on the other side, while we celebrate about advanced technology, it's crucial to be mindful of the risk associated with misaligned intelligence and proactively develop control measures. So numerous scientists and engineers have spoken on the issues of preparing for the era of artificial intelligence. Some key consideration and concerns, including emotional engagement, increased interaction among people for robots development, the reflection of our values in AI teaching, and the challenges associated with bias and transparency in human decisions. Certainly not saying the human is the factor. That's conclude my presentation. I will pass the platform to Dr. Rose.
Thank you very much, Professor Hongwei. Just as we move across to Gary's presentation, just to let you know that if you've got any questions, please feel free to use the Q&A function. I'm copiously writing down notes here, so if you don't have questions, I'll definitely have questions, but these have usually been fairly active with questions. Gary, over to you.
Thank you, Hongwei, and thank you, Andrew. Good day, everyone. Today, I'm going to discuss a bit about our work, NIOSH, in emerging technologies, the future of work, strategic foresight, and some of the challenges that we're going to need to face in the coming years relating to the human worker in an increasingly technological environment. Before I begin, mandatory disclaimer, anything I say here is my own current belief, and it's not necessarily an official position of NIOSH, CDC, or any other agency. And likewise, if I mention any names, firms, products, or such, that's not an official endorsement by any agency either. We at NIOSH conduct research dedicated to preserving and protecting the total health of workers. And this is per the charge given to us in the OSH Act of 1970. And while we support some other activities beyond research, the main thrust is developing knowledge to protect workers and help implement it. Our role is decidedly non-regulatory, with a few notable exceptions, such as respirator certification. And NIOSH includes nearly 1,100 researchers from Anchorage, Alaska, to Atlanta, Georgia. And geographic diversity matters since the U.S. economy and workforce is just as diverse. And for myself, I'm based out of Cincinnati, Ohio, so you might hear some of my native New York pacing in this talk. Our staff expertise runs from traditional industrial hygiene to economics to psychology and to information technology. This breadth of expertise is vitally important for perspective on the future of work, and we'll discuss why. But first, I'm going to take you through a bit of NIOSH's history with emerging technologies, and this journey really begins with the Nanotechnology Research Center, or NTRC. This started in 2004, which was the same year that the U.S. National Nanotechnology Initiative released its first strategic plan. And we realized that if nanotechnology took off as we expected, there could be a very large pool of exposed workers, which we did not want to happen before we had established good control schemes and good exposure limit criteria, something we need to be proactive. We also knew we were going to need an interdisciplinary perspective, and partnerships would be key to this. We coupled lab-based studies with a very active outreach program and field studies team, and this was to gain practical experience in how the technology is being developed and used. And this helped pioneers in nanotechnology develop their processes in a safe manner, and we benefited from a more robust understanding that helped us develop pertinent guidance. And this guidance ranged from the voluminous tomes that supported recommended exposure limits on carbon nanotubes and silver and titanium dioxide to index-sized reference cards for nanomaterial handling. We have products targeted at the regular worker and the innovator and the academic. And we think that this really contributed to our success. In 20 years, we've not seen an epidemic of nanotechnology-related illness to rival asbestos or heavy metals, despite nanomaterials being present in nearly every economic sector. But we also observed that nanotechnology was not a standalone, and it's an enabler of many other technologies that we associate with Industry 4.0 and now 5.0. Where we saw a direct line, such as in additive manufacturing, the NTRC adapted ways to research and investigate it. But another related example, and Hongwei talked about, is in robotics, where in 2017, the Center for Occupational Robotics Research was launched, and this was based heavily on the NTRC model. Still, I think it's fair to say we're in the middle of a wave of new technologies with the potential to be highly disruptive. Just as mechanization disrupted agrarian societies and electronics disrupted mechanized societies, we're now looking at data-driven technologies that are disrupting our electronics-driven society. And so when we ask these technologies, when we ask, what the impacts are going to be, we can't treat them in a vacuum. So additive manufacturing and robotics have been around for a fair part of half a century, but it's the impacts of things like machine learning and the Internet of Things that are changing how they interact more directly with human beings. And there are other more profound impacts, such as the ability to potentially enable a distributed manufacturing supply chain rather than the traditional one. And this can be highly disruptive. So while it's good to think proactively, we also need to think differently. And while you might observe that technologies I point out are related to manufacturing, that's just where many of them started, and they certainly didn't stay there. In transportation, warehousing, and utilities, we've got self-driving transportation vehicles on roads and warehouses, loading robots, sensors tracking everything from humidity levels to worker positioning and productivity. In agricultures, we have self-driving tractors, autonomous grain levelers, cow milkers, and drones that have both assess and tend fields. In healthcare, we see increasing use of robotic surgery, lifting assistance in nursing, and use of AI in diagnostics. And in services, AI is now used as an analytical tool in nearly every industry, from finances to real estate, and it has a growing role in customer service. And in programming, it's called Copilot, not just because of that particular service, but because in multiple sense of the word, it is a Copilot. AIs have even been writing articles for news sites for years before the public became conscious of large language models. So basically, there's not a sector that's not impacted. And this sets the ground for talking about our Future of Work initiative. And while I'm a major proponent of a technological perspective, we also are going to need a broader scope because change exists beyond the technological domain. We're talking about globalization, extreme weather events, demographics, politics, and more. And this is all going to impact work, the workplace, and the workforce. So workers are going to face changing risks, hazards, and exposures, and we have to be ready. In 2019, our director, Dr. Howard, launched the Future of Work initiative, which was an explicit recognition of this accelerating pace of change and the need for an interdisciplinary effort to tackle it. And since our founding in 2019, we've achieved several fundamental milestones. We launched our internal cross-cutting work group that year, and the following year, we published our foundational paper that lays out our thinking on numerous topics in the future of work, and it's mostly still relevant today. In 2021, we began a series of public webinars and blog posts on the future of work, and you can find those on our website. In the same year, we worked with IJERPH to create the first of several special issues focused on the future of work, and last year we published our research agenda. And this initiative is built upon a rich history of proactive efforts at NIOSH, some of which I've already mentioned. But I'd be remiss if I did not call out our Total Worker Health Program and Healthy Work Design and Wellbeing Cross-Sector Program, because for reasons that will soon become clear is the holistic perspective of these programs that enable occupational safety and health in the future of work. So to frame the future of work, we started by looking at broad swath of issues from Industry 4.0 to resource shortages and geopolitics and talk about their manifestations and implications. And we grouped this huge list of topics into 9 priority topic areas, which we further grouped into 3 overarching categories relating to work, the workplace, and the workforce. And you can see them here, though you may need the assistance of a magnifying tool. But if you do have one handy, you can see the variety of things ranging from corporate responsibility to exoskeletons and to productive aging. And the implications of these areas of these issues are myriad and far-reaching, but they're also intersecting and compounding. Different fields, firms, and workers will encounter differing arrays of these topics and the opportunities and problems they portend. So it's clear that there's not going to be a one-size-fits-all solution to the future of work. And this is a good time to return to total worker health and healthy workplace design and well-being. Because if we think about the fundamentals of total worker health, these being leadership commitment, hazard elimination, engaging workers, ensuring privacy, and integrating systems, we can see the basis for an approach that will help organizations recognize and address challenges at multiple levels by bringing to the table the maximum number of participant perspectives. And in fact, some of these points seem tailor-made to future of work issues, including the explicit recognition of the importance of privacy and confidentiality in a data-driven future. And this dovetails neatly with the prevention through design's emphasis on the hierarchy of controls and multi-participant engagement. Given the cost of many modern technologies and the importance of design considerations and effectiveness, this multi-participant model and addressing challenges in the design phase is likely to only grow in importance. So let's get a little more specific and discuss some of the human factors in the future of work. And I'm going to start this section by telling you a story. So several years ago, I was with our field team at an additive manufacturing site, and things there were pretty clean, and we were able to give some points on housekeeping ventilation, but it seemed like they mostly had things well in hand. But after having mostly finished up for the day, we were talking with a tech, and we were asking what it's like to work with so many 3D printers. He explained that mostly these tools run themselves, but that they occasionally go down. And when they do, they get a notification someone needs to go and address it. And this seems reasonable given how expensive time is on these machines. So I pressed and asked, does that mean you're on call on the weekends? Yes. Middle of the night? Sometimes. And I said, well, what if a tool is dealing with a particularly troublesome build? And at this, he recounts a story involving multiple near hour-long commutes back and forth to his workplace over a weekend in the middle of the night in very hazardous driving weather. And this stuck with me, because I never expected to hear the fatigue, stress, and motor vehicle hazards will be a contributor to additive manufacturing worker risks. But there it was. And it's important to remember that while technology can improve our lives, it always has unexpected consequences. And that is the core of this section. So let's begin by discussing some non-traditional work arrangements. And these are remote work, platform-based work, contractual work, on-call work. Basically, most things aren't set hour permanent positions. And we know that there's more of these of these workers. The ratio of non-traditional to traditional is increasing very rapidly with no sign of a reversal. And this offers some advantages, the biggest one being flexibility. You can be productive wherever you're able or need to. And it also offers the possibility of an improved work-life fit. You can find hours, location, regularity that fit a worker's needs and preferences. It also offers the opportunity to improve health, safety and health. So you can reduce the hazards associated with commutes. You can also reduce the spread of communicable disease by taking a worker out of a crowded office. And on the other hand, though, we know that there are challenges. For instance, teleworkers can work theoretically almost anywhere and any time, but there might be pressure to work everywhere and at all times. And that pressure might come directly from a supervisor, but it could also just come from seeing one's colleagues act this way. And this creates the autonomy paradox, which is quite real. At the same time, physical distance may reduce opportunities for some kinds of interactions that have meaningful value in terms of both personal fulfillment for a worker, but also career advancement, which can translate to increased psychosocial stress. Additionally, there's a link between many types of non-traditional work arrangements and precarious work, and work as a social determinant of health. Precarious work may add economic challenges that can affect total worker health. And finally, we know that workers shift jobs more frequently over the course of their careers than historically. And this creates challenges related to properly tracking exposures over a mobile career. And this implications both for an individual's health, but also for the entire discipline doing studies on occupational health across the field. We also recognize that the pace of innovation is accelerating. As we discussed earlier, no sector is untouched. Productivity is increasing at a profound rate. And while there's some debate on the details, generally overall productivity increase correlates with increased health across the population, and that's a good thing. But specifically, we also see opportunities for machines to take over dirty, dangerous, and dull jobs, much like Hongwei spoke about earlier. These are things we don't want people doing. And if an uncrewed aerial vehicle can work from heights, or a robot can clean up a chemical hazard, so much the better. We also get more ability to optimize tasks and get more mileage from the worker's effort. But there's also some challenges as well. The first is the potential for work intensification. Machines can work much faster pace than humans, and we need to be cognizant of human limits. And while historically we've often thought about this in physical context, mental limits can matter as well and are becoming increasingly important. The pressure of global competition, the rate of tech introduction, and the relative invisibility of mental health hazards can sharpen that risk. Relatedly, this creates a huge training burden. Sometimes training is expected to be completed on top of workers' regular responsibilities, and this is before we even talk about the risk of being displaced by technology. That can create a huge reskilling burden, and this can hit vulnerable workers especially hard. Next, interface design. And this is not just about performance, this is about safety and health. Augmented reality headsets should not cause workers headaches. Autonomous vehicles shouldn't shut off their steering before workers are ready to resume control. Automatic control systems should override a worker's setting without a clear indication. And these are all things that we have seen particular cases of in literature and news. Human-centered design is really a key. And finally, data. There's just so much of it, and it can reveal potentially very sensitive and damaging information about workers. And there's a need to respect worker confidentiality, privacy, to use data ethically, and to secure data against cyber criminals. Moreover, workers are going to be interacting with increasingly networked technology, and malfunctions due to cybersecurity failures may not just be a reputational or a financial risk, but they may be an occupational safety and health risk as well. And finally, the proverbial elephant in the room is AI, and I can only scratch the surface in the time of this talk. AI offers the ability to automatically detect hazards with computer vision, report issues to workers at risk, and potentially to managers or professionals who can do something about it. Moreover, it can predict failure. We can predict machine failures by using temperature sensors around motors and other parts and detecting heating, and efforts being put into mapping worker movement in workspaces and seeing how often and what factors contribute to them coming into contact with hazardous zones and areas. AI is also a decision-making aid, and that means it can help support risk management options, such as weighing different options for controls, or it can also help match workers to an ideal job for their skill sets and capabilities, and other aspects of their personal nature. And there's tons more I could say here. In the interest of time, we've got to move on to the challenges and create some real ones. Everything I said about pace of innovation is true, but there's more here as well. First has to do with AI itself and the model and training data. These have to be appropriate to the task and the workers involved, or you potentially get undesirable results. This is particularly problematic for vulnerable workers who are often not sufficiently or fairly represented in the training data, and we talk about bias in this way. It can also be a problem when repurposing existing models and data in general, which is going to be an issue until these tools are much easier to create and implement. And second, we do not yet have sufficiently robust frameworks for assessing the risk of AI or interrogating their failures in certain contexts. There's also risk that technology will be undertrusted and thus underused or blamed when it's at fault. And when it's not at fault, conversely, we also may see this technology overtrusted and then workers getting blamed for problems that are fundamentally about a technological failure. Explainable AI is not a panacea here. This is actually a work culture question. Third, there is the potential that rates of job displacement could rapidly accelerate as AI moves into new fields. While the rate of technological job creation versus erosion is still hotly contested, there are clear indicators over the past year that generative AI has been suddenly and severely disruptive to several previously in-demand fields. Even if there are new jobs out there, the associated psychosocial stress with losing one's job or feeling it under constant threat are real, as are upskilling and reskilling challenges we discussed earlier. And finally, I want to talk about some other psychosocial questions. We don't yet fully understand how workers are affected by the idea that AI might not merely be a tool, but also a coworker or a supervisor. It does undermine a sense of autonomy or self-worth. And even where AI remains a tool, if a machine is taking over tasks that workers find fulfilling, does that reduce the value they place in their work or the value they perceive others place in them? And unfortunately, this is an area where we still have more questions than answers. How the future will unfold remains uncertain, but we need to be ready. That brings me to the last section of my talk, which is about strategic foresight. We launched our effort into strategic foresight in 2021 because NIOSH recognized that it was not enough to have a snapshot of current trends, but we realized the future is constantly evolving and we need to be able to evolve with it. As a federal agency, NIOSH is well positioned to address the vulnerability of underpreparedness. In recent years, we built our capacity in strategic foresight. And this is a practice that helps organizations and individuals understand, prepare for, and influence the future. And the core of foresight is identifying, assessing, and monitoring early and weak signals of change. So it's not about predicting what's next, it's about what if, or what are the possibilities. There's a growing body of evidence that there's a link between foresight and positive organizational outcomes, such as performance and innovation and just general preparedness. Our framework and our work in strategic foresight is guided by the Foresight Framework for Occupational Safety and Health, which is an adaptation of the University of Houston's internationally recognized discipline neutral foresight framework foresight. And it consists of 6 action-oriented stages, which are framing the topic of interest, scanning for evidence or signals of change, futuring scenarios, visioning implications and options, designing strategies based on that, and then finally monitoring for new evidence relating to the topic area. Taken together, these identify evidence of coming change and generate a set of scenarios, comprehensive analysis of the implications and impacts, and a responsive strategic plan. And so what we did is we gathered evidence and used this to analyze the future of work in occupational safety and health. And certain key drivers that came out of this effort were the identification of advanced technology, which can increase productivity, customize work environments, but might outpace the rate at which workers can be retrained or systems can be developed to control hazards. Climate change, which will encourage companies to move towards sustainable processes. It'll affect infrastructure work practices, and it will change hazards and risks for workers. Data security, which will be driven by new collection and communications, and is going to be an essential need to leverage the possible benefits of increased data. That the current knowledge paradigm will fundamentally change due to underlying political and social forces, creating a lack of trust in government and challenges in information dissemination. And consumers of research products may drive funding decisions and communication strategies. Social credit, which is a measure of trustworthiness for workers and organizations, could affect a sense of corporate responsibility and be affected by corporate responsibility, which could in turn affect worker recruitment. And this relates to safety and health of workers. Non-standard work arrangements, we expect to become the new normal, and workers face challenges and needs in ever-evolving hiring. Virtual work becoming the norm. And finally, the evolving workforce as demographic employment patterns shift dramatically, and education needs to cope with that. And so to better understand what these drivers imply for the future of work, we map them across 4 generic futures. And these come out of the University of Hawaii. And there are 4 different outcomes for this model. The future can either continue along its trajectory, collapse under the weight of negative forces and crisis, correct to reach a new equilibrium that's quite different than the present, or transform entirely. So in our continuation future, it was mostly characterized by the boundaries continuing to blur between work locations, employment arrangements, work hours and work-life fit, and human-machine interactions. The collapse future is a perfect storm, which is characterized by self-reliance, lack of trust, weakened public services, and an inability of occupational safety and health community to meet worker needs. The new equilibrium future sees demands for research set primarily focused on worker-centric arrangements, remote work, and human-machine collaborations. And workers, in this case, rather than their employers, are the ones primarily responsible for managing their own long-term exposures, chronic health conditions, portable benefits portfolios, and work-life integration as they frequently change jobs. And the final scenario is a transformational future characterized by an advanced technology world. In this world, AI and robotics create unparalleled capacity, but research is driven by population need. And in this case, mental health and data protections become central elements of an expanded occupational safety and health paradigm. Now, while the scenarios are interesting stories, their real utility lies in their ability to help us identify challenges that they imply for the future. And through a series of workshop activities, which involved occupational safety and health subject matter experts, NIOSH extracted several key issues related to worker mental health, virtual work, occupational safety and health research, partnerships, and data security for the occupational safety and health community to consider as it prepares for the future. And if these issues sound familiar, it's not a coincidence. We touched upon many of these ideas in the previous section, and Hongwei did in his talk as well. And the fact that many of these ideas connect on so many levels reinforces their importance for the future of work. All right, now I'm going to leave you at the end of this talk with a quote from Socrates, which is that to be uncertain is uncomfortable, but to be certain is ridiculous. I hope our talk has discomforted you all just enough to be provocative. Before I go, I want to take a moment to acknowledge Jay Vitas, my colleagues in the Emerging Technologies branch, and Jessica Straight and Sarah Faulkner in the Office of Research Integration for their contributions to these efforts and this talk. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gary. I really appreciated the the fast-paced New York. You said your home of New York, so it definitely came through in there. It was a lot to absorb. I've got pages and pages and pages of stuff of notes that I've taken from there. So thank you very much. We've come to the parts of the webinar where we're open up for questions. You're welcome to post your questions in the Q&A, and alternatively in the chat. I prefer it in the Q&A because I can manage it if it's all in one place. I was going to ask a question about the drivers, and then you answered it in terms of the drivers. One thing that I've noticed just from sitting and seeing what's happening in various other parts of the world, one of the things which is happening particularly in developed parts of the world is technology being used to either enhance skills or to replace skills which might be lost through things like aging. And I just wondered whether the US was in a similar type of situation. What's driving all of this technology change? Other than, I mean, you mentioned this stuff about hazards. Both of you mentioned issues about hazards and reducing hazards. But are there any like driving forces related to humans behind here? I don't know who wants to go first on that one. Let's give Gary's voice a rest. Hongwei, maybe you want to tackle that first.
Yeah, certainly. Well, in the US HFES, we always have that standard that technology should be an assistant device or assistant things. It's human-centered. We have to acknowledge the reality that some jobs eventually will be replaced, but that doesn't mean it's bad things. It's just the reality that how we can train our workers to move forwards, to have a better opportunity. That's our stand.
Okay, that's interesting. Gary, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of drivers for the technological change. So, outside of this, I think obviously there's going to be profit motives, and there's also just the desire of people to innovate. But I think that a lot of that desire to innovate really focuses on where they can make positive change, and this is often in terms of alleviating risks to lost health and loss of life, and that's where you see a lot of these tools enter. And there's certainly a lot of focus on it, both in terms of aging population more generally and addressing them in the medical field. It's a great example, but also addressing the needs to tend to those individuals. And also the fact that our society, as it becomes more diverse, integrated, and the realities of needing to enable those who might be at some type of disadvantage come up, that's also fostering a lot of development to enable those who might otherwise have difficulties, such as, for instance, development of prosthetics, things like that, augmented reality systems, implants, things like that. So I think that there is a real drive to try and improve quality of life. I mean
that's really fascinating, because it's quite different to some of the drivers in places like the UK. I see we have a number of UK people here sitting in on this webinar, where they have skill shortages. In other words, the technology is there to fulfill tasks which there aren't enough humans to fulfill. And I wondered whether, given the US's historically low unemployment figures at the moment, whether that was also a driver behind technology development.
It is. It is. Ultimately, there's always a desire to find ways to handle and minimize the need to be dependent on a narrow labor pool. And the difficulty is that those advances are often actually very difficult to predict, because I don't think, for instance, anyone predicted the massive surge of generative AI that we've seen in the past year into the public sphere. But those are one of the things that really do stimulate people to work on it. So that I put under the economic and profit-driven motive in a lot of cases as well.
No. I'm not seeing any questions, so I'm hugging the questions at the moment, but the audience is more than welcome to ask their own questions. The issues, I was quite interested. I mean, they started the task force on nanotechnology back in 2004, and we haven't seen this great big surge of nanotechnologies. Is that because the companies have been scared off, or has the surge happened in the dark?
So if I may, so I
Yes,
think that
please,
what
yeah.
happened in a lot of these cases is that what happened is now technology got a lot of focus and attention, but the implementation of now technology has been quiet. So what we didn't see was like the classic image of automated nanorobots going up and, you know, and building new structures or sweeping the ocean for pollutants, because ultimately the other fields that would have needed to support that, such as artificial intelligence, really weren't there yet.
Okay.
But what we did see is a lot of nano advancement in other areas that bore out in a lot of, for instance, advanced manufacturing. So advances in semiconductors, flexible electronics, sensors, and material science. And these are all, a lot of them driven by nanotechnology advancements. So when I said nanotechnology has impacted many different sectors, basically the impact of nanotechnology on material science alone has been absolutely massive, and you'll see it across basically all manufacturing.
Yeah.
And also it's present in construction. Obviously, it has impacted the development of pharmaceuticals and plenty more things. So that's where a lot of it went. It didn't disappear. It went quiet and integrated elsewhere.
That's totally fascinating. I think David Thompson from the UK is saying US productivity and economy is booming. Also, a very vibrant manufacturing base that is boosted out of COVID or onshoring. And I think very much he's saying context is important. The one thing which I didn't hear either of you speak about, and maybe you want to comment on that, and that's the issue of biotechnologies. Or maybe that's built into nanotechnologies, but there are a whole range of things around biotechnologies, particularly around genetic engineering and also how that might integrate with things like robotics. I didn't see you mentioning it, but I know your time was short. So.
Would you like to go first?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, since DNA things, biotech thing is not my area, but the Human Factors Society do have annual conference on healthcare things, and that is one of the subject matter has been discussed. And certainly, biotech is engaging in human factors issues that will benefit from robotics and AIs to deal with occupational safety and health issues. Particularly, we understand that they exposed to the biology and chemical exposures that traditionally is also labor intensive, and they can utilize AIs and robotics at the same time to, again, reduce the exposure for sure.
Yeah, indeed. There's been some very interesting advancements in that over the last 4 years in particular. So, yeah.
I think it goes hand in hand with AI too. So like a lot of the challenges that we've seen in biotechnology, if one, they've scaled down, 2, advances in advanced manufacturing have enabled them. And 3 is that a lot of fundamental biology problems, new solutions are being developed by both AI efforts as well as new computational methods, such as being able to effectively crowdsource computing power. So yeah, we're probably going to see a very big impact of this. This is not something I touched on my talk, but limits of time. But yeah, I think that we are looking at a future where advances in biotechnology, both in terms of manufacturing with biomaterials and enabling bioproducts, but also the way in which advanced biology will impact the way that the workers' capabilities directly. That is something that is going to be impactful in the future potentially.
And then I think my last question, sorry, when you see my head going down, I'm copiously writing down notes. And both of you sort of touched on this very much, and some of the challenges from the future of work, which we saw in the US over the summer this year, were related to climate and climate issues. Is that stuff which is being integrated into your work, particularly working under extremely high heat conditions or under extreme weather conditions? Other types of extreme weather conditions other than heat?
Yeah, well, definitely climate issue is one of the big issue in the United States. The White House actually released the white paper on that issues. Those people who are interested in this subject matters actually can Google to find the document. It's in the public domains, and certainly at the university levels, we all seeking for grants to work on that. There are a lot of topics that Human Factors and Ergonomics Society, along with those people who are interested in decarbonizations and battery things, energy things, all tied together, has a potential of AI and robotics applications as part of it.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
no, thank you. Yeah, Gary?
Yeah, I can agree more. I think that you can put this in very simply into two categories. One is that the effects of climate change and extreme weather are going to drive a lot of industrial investment decision making. We saw that in a couple of our scenarios, and that is going to therefore change some of workers' tasks and their risks associated with that. But then there's the direct impacts of those extreme weather events, which could affect the risks to workers operating outdoors. And that's one of the reasons why, for instance, we've actually been looking a lot at heat stress, and we've been paying as an organization a lot of attention to that as well.
Oh, that's I mean, that's fascinating, encouraging to see that the US is starting to catch up with other parts of the world who've had this on their agenda for a long time. So it's good to see. I think we're well over time now, and I'm aware of other people's time, but maybe we can just take one last question from the audience. And this is from Denise Ilter. In light of the shifting demographics towards an aging population, how crucial do you believe inclusivity is in the design of robotics? I think Denise is talking about here in design towards an aging population and the involvement of aging people in the design of robotics for the tasks that they need.
Yes, I can sort of answer these questions on two aspects. In the United States, several universities and also even small business companies or those startup companies actually focusing on developing service or home care robots. And I have seen a couple presentations at the ErgoX, very exciting. As a matter of fact, in the 2023 ErgoX, we have one sections that's dedicated for that discussions, very exciting. And we will have our proceeding published probably in a few months. Hopefully those people who are interested in the subject matters can dig into that as well.
Thank you. Gary, last words.
Yeah, just to keep it to that question in the interest of time, I think again, there's two things. One is, as Hongwei was just really highlighting, the idea that yes, the fact that there is an aging population creates a target market for a lot of robotic innovations. But I think that there's that actually this can be expanded because that we also in the United States are dealing with not only an increasingly diverse population in terms of age, in both older and younger. It's sort of increasingly bimodal, but there's also a large pool of workers who either are ethnically different or culturally different, and then the historical norm. And therefore, because we've got this greater variety of different workers, it's as critical to get them involved in the design of these tools, which they will be using. And I think that is something that's very well recognized. Just like AI bias and concerns around that has gotten a lot of attention lately, I think that the implications of potential bias by not being inclusive in design processes is not lost on robotics designers generally.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to use this opportunity to close off the session and to thank both our speakers very much for their thoughtful insights. It's always wonderful to hear from different parts of the world, and this again has been a delight. So thank you very much to you, Hongwei, and to you, Gary, for your inputs, and of course to the audience. Those of you who've remained right to the end, thank you very much.